Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help. And King of Floors, your vinyl, laminate, and engineered flooring superstore.
On Tuesday, the BC government announced its 4-step reopening plan. John Horgan, Premier of BC, who won a silver medal back in the day in the 70s in the sport of lacrosse in Calgary, joining us now. John, thanks for doing this. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Donnie. You neglected to say that I won a gold medal in Burnaby before I went to Calgary to win the silver.
Oh.
But nice try, man. Nice try.
John Sanich team beat our Norburn team in the provincials. We ended up winning the nationals in Calgary that year. It was a fun bus ride home.
You crushed us, quite frankly. It was no one was more surprised than we were, Donnie. But back in the day, there were such great rivalries between the island and Burnaby. I remember as a kid traveling back and forth on the ferry. It was such a rush, and that's why I'm excited that we've been able to launch the restart plan and get kids back playing again. For both you and I, look, we turned out okay, and I think that getting kids sports started again is the beginning, and then we can look to the bigger challenges of the Caps and the Rugby Sevens and, of course, the Lions. But so far, so good.
John, let's get back to Tuesday for a second here. And you just talked about this, and we talked about it in the first hour. What does this mean? What does Tuesday's announcement mean for parents of kids involved in minor sports at all levels?
Well, we've been working with the Via Sport and minor sports. Dr. Henry and her team have been really, really good, reaching out, trying to make sense of this insane time we've been living through. And I know it's been a struggle for everyone, but when you've got young ones that are passionate about whether it's lacrosse or hockey or baseball, soccer, you name it, when they can't play, when they can only practice, it starts to get frustrating. They start to lose interest. They start to think of doing other things with their time. Mm-hmm. So a minor sport is so critical to the development of young people, socialization, teamwork, all of those things that we know so well. And we were anxious to get that launched as quickly as possible. And I can tell you, my inbox is filled with emails from Little League parents who are excited about getting going. They're going to be starting in the days ahead. The restart allows us to play outdoor sports. We'll see more travel in a couple of weeks so that we can go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And those fierce rivalries like Norburn and Saanich, for example, can be revived again across the province. And then we'll build up by the time we get to July 1. We'll be almost back to normal. We'll have crowds at events or more people rather than crowds, I'd like to say. And, of course, as the summer goes forward, vaccinations continue to go at the rate they are. Hospitalizations come down. All of those metrics that we've been looking at and the public have been following, those interested have been following for months and months. As long as they keep going in the right direction, we'll be getting back to normal. And for me and for your listeners, of course, sport is a key part of that.
There will be no WLA season, no Man Cup. But, John, have you been in touch with the BCHL or the Western Hockey League regarding their situations?
I have not recently, not since Tuesday, but we did work very closely with the Western Hockey League and the BC League to make sure we could get those bubbles going. And it took longer than anyone would have liked, but there were significant challenges. The third wave began just as we were looking at opening up for those hockey leagues. And we'll see how we go from there. The WLA part is sad for me because as you know, Don, the Western franchise almost to a team are pretty strong right now, but they can't absorb 2 consecutive years of no play. But in my discussions with the Shamrock leadership, I haven't talked to the league, but the Shamrock leadership, they just felt that Ontario couldn't make any commitments. If we couldn't have a Man Cup, it was slated for the East this year. They just felt that they couldn't sustain their businesses with no fans because at that point we couldn't give them any assurances. And then with no Man Cup to play for, that's tough. And I think of all of those great players that their careers will be quietly coming to an end as they miss a second season. And that's a shame because there's some outstanding players who would have wanted to go out on a high note rather than in the middle of a pandemic.
Let's go back to last March, John. Was there a point, a low point, where you thought a day like Tuesday was just not going to happen?
Well, I don't think so in March, Donnie. I felt Dr. Henry was pretty blunt and laid it out for us when we got our first briefing on the pandemic and what the consequences could be. But we all thought, well, okay, that's going to be a couple of months, we'll get back to normal. But certainly by last summer, it became abundantly clear that we had a long way to go. And I think the darkest period for me was in the December-January period when we were at the height of the second wave, and there was no prospect of vaccinations ramping up. And we know and we've seen the evidence of how even one dose can have a positive impact. We need to get those second doses out, and we need people to register, get a booking, and get a vaccination. I hope that you'll keep pushing that for the rest of the day and for the rest of the week, quite frankly, because that will get us to a place faster where we can go back to playing indoors. But the dark period for me was over the Christmas break when it looked like we were months and months away from arriving at where we were on Tuesday.
Hey, John, I go back to when you told the BC Hockey League that 19, 20-year-olds couldn't be on the ice, and I know a lot of junior hockey coaches, they weren't happy at all. How tough was it behind the scenes? You had so many teams and coaches unhappy. It must have been a real tough time for you guys.
Oh, it was, and that's kind of comes with the territory. On a normal day, politics is a rough and tumble business, but when it comes to things that are normally not thought about as political, it becomes even more difficult. And I'm a huge sports fan. I know the power of participation. And again, for young kids looking to try and land a scholarship that will set them up for their education or make that break to get to a higher league to maybe be compensated for their talents, those are just crushing moments. And we were very aware of that. Adrian Dix and I we've been friends for a long, long time. We came together around sports and transcended into politics. So for him, it was equally difficult. And I have to say, Bonnie is a passionate sports fan as well. And so these were tough choices that we had to make. But for the 19, 20-year-olds, they were very vulnerable. Of course, all three of us remember being young and invincible, but you're not when it comes to a virus as insidious as COVID-19. And so these were health measures. They were not meant to be punitive. It was meant to protect people. And as tough as they were, I hope that they'll become distant memories, at least for most, as they get back to playing, and hopefully they can start chasing those dreams again.
Oakland A's may relocate. Vancouver's name has popped up. You've said that Major League Baseball could work in Vancouver. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was pleased to work with local representatives of the Canadians to encourage the Blue Jays to keep their affiliation with the C's. And I thought that was a positive outcome within the pandemic. But now that there's talk of a possibility of an MLB franchise, I can't think of a better thing to get it behind. And I know that BC Place isn't the best place to play baseball, but I think that we could work on that. Again, it's going to need community support, and it's not going to come from government, but government won't be in the way, I can assure you of that. If the community comes forward with a plan that will work, that needs our assistance, we're happy to participate. The benefits, the spin-off benefits of sport, we've really seen now. And in talking to Canuck ownership, they play such a key role in our community and in our economy, and we don't think about it until it's not there. And so having Major League Baseball, we can now look at the spin-off effects or economic development with a different light, quite frankly. The bluebirds who would say, oh, no, we shouldn't be investing in professional sports. Well, there's a payoff to that, just as there is in investing in film, as there is in investing in technology. Sport creates jobs, and it creates hope and something to aspire to for young people. All of those are intangibles that I think government needs to consider when we're talking about these things.
In our Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, John, we're getting a lot of this. And we see the crowds at the NHL and NBA games, Major League Baseball, all of that down south. Are you worried about people rushing back into normal life after the restrictions?
Well, I have to tell you that after I watched the Hurricanes game the other day, I went to North Carolina and Googled the population's about twice the size of BC. Mm-hmm. They have not vaccinated as many people as we have, and I thought that's a super spreader waiting to happen. So I think British Columbia is a different place. I think Canadians look at this differently than Americans do. And we're heading to 65% first doses. Dr. Henry is going to be announcing second dose strategy later today. As long as the vaccines keep arriving, which was really a problem in February and March, as long as they keep arriving, we're going to be in a really solid place. And again, we're talking to the Canuck ownership, talking to Bobby Lenarduzzi just yesterday. We need to have bums and seats for these businesses to thrive and prosper. And so that's a key part of the restart plan. And we want to do it in a methodical way. The Lions, of course, have been very patient as well. The CFL is looking at an August 5 start, and I think that's achievable as well. But it's going to take a plan, and the public health officials have been ready, willing, and able from the beginning to not put up obstacles, but to put up measures to keep people safe and to keep open, whether it's a business, whether it's a sport. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to have bums and seats. The plan for the rugby sevens, for example, has been approved. Now we just need to get those vaccination rates up so that we can let more people into the building.
Yeah, before we let you go, John, you said something there, and I don't like ripping into our neighbors down south, but you said something there. Canadians look at the situation differently than Americans. Can you expand on that?
Well, again, from the beginning, we've had an approach in BC of all hands on deck, and I look across the country. I'm going to be participating, I think it's the 30th conference call with premiers and the Prime Minister since the pandemic began. The Prime Minister reminds us at the beginning of each one, I've lost track, but a lot, way more than has ever happened in Canadian history of the diverse political makeup of the country in terms of partisanship, in terms of regional differences, coming together and figuring out what do we do collectively. And of course that the public goes, well, shouldn't you be doing that every day? Why do you need a pandemic to do that? But the reality is it had never happened before. And I look to the South, all of the acrimony around elections and Mr. Trump and all of that still going on to this day, and weaponizing masks, right? I mean, is that such a sacrifice to make? I think of the sacrifices generations in the past have made at Normandy, at Dieppe, and we're just saying, hey, why don't you wear a mask and stay away from people for a little while? Canadians as a group have embraced that. Obviously, there are those who disagree, but they're a small minority. In the U.S., it's like right down the middle. It's become, if you're a Republican, you have to say this is bogus. If you're a Democrat, you say what's wrong with you. And we just haven't done that in Canada. And I think that speaks to how we as a people, public health care is part of that, right? We all recognize that if we band together, we can overcome just about anything. And that makes me proud of our citizenship and proud of how Canadians right across the country have managed this issue. There's been ups and downs, of course, and there's a lot of heated debate. I try and stay away from the comment sections where all the really smart people show up with their degrees in epidemiology and tell Dr. Henry she doesn't know what she's talking about. But anyway, we have to just put that aside and remind ourselves that there's a small minority that are in that camp, and the rest of the public are saying, well, what can I do to help my neighbor, my community, my country? And that separates us from the other guys quite distinctly, I think.
Okay, I lied. One more, because we're getting some reaction in our inbox. Where are we when it comes in, quickly, John, but where are we when it comes to going to big events and like the Canuck games, Lions games, etc., Whitecaps, and having to have a vaccine passport? Where are we with that?
Well, we haven't landed on that. Obviously, you're going to need a vaccine passport to travel internationally. But how are we going to manage that domestically? We're still working on that. We got privacy issues. We don't want to be discriminating against people who, for health reasons, aren't able to get a vaccine. Okay. For those who are making a deliberate political choice, deciding that they know more about the science than the scientists, that'll be a challenge. But we haven't landed on it, Donnie. It's an important issue. But I'm confident that if we continue to see the numbers going up as we have, and again, as you guys pump this all week about get registered, get vaccinated, we're going to get to a place certainly by August and into September. I think the next hockey season is a no-brainer. I'd love to see a ton of people watching the Lions play this year and the Whitecaps. Having them playing out of Utah just doesn't. It's weird. Yeah. But God bless them that they're doing it, and not dissimilar to the Jays and other Canadian-based teams. But we need to see evidence in the United States. And I go back to my quick Googling of what's going on in North Carolina. If they're stuck at 50%, and I talked to the governor of Washington just the other day, they're at 59. I can't wait for Kraken Canuck rivalry to develop, and if we get an MLB team here to have a Canadians MLB team playing against the Mariners, this is going to be great for local rivalries, and I'm excited about all of that.
Thanks, John, and congrats on that silver medal back in the 70s.
I'll send you another picture of my goal, Donnie. It's always good to hear from you, and I'm just delighted you guys are working together at Czech. And I recall saying, Don, you had to become a Shamrocks fan now that you're working out of a Victoria-based station, but I didn't hear back from you.
Yeah, we'll get a jersey up in the background here. We promise. Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Bye now.
Premier of BC, John Horgan.